3 sharp explosions rang out, tearing apart the quiet night of a peaceful Austin neighborhood. Then came the sound of hurried footsteps, and then silence. Complete silence. No one screamed, no calls for help. But what happened behind that half-closed door would shock the entire United States. Inside the small house at the end of the street, a young woman lay motionless, not because of an accident, but because someone had taken action, coldly and decisively. Her name was Moriah Wilson, aka Mo, 25 years old, one of the most promising cyclists in the country, just arriving in Austin to prepare for a major tournament. Full of dreams, determination, and burning passion. No one expected that, just a few hours later, everything would be taken away, for a reason that no one dared to admit: jealousy. On the evening of May 11th, 2022, Moriah Wilson finished a long training session for the Gravel Locos race. She returned home to shower, change clothes, and text an old friend, Colin Strickland, a professional racer with whom she had a relationship during his breakup with his girlfriend, Caitlin Armstrong. At approximately 5:30 p.m., Moriah and Colin met at a local coffee shop, then went to a nearby swimming pool. They chatted, relaxed, and nothing unusual happened. The two left the pool around 8 p.m. Colin took Mo back to the apartment she was staying at with a friend, located on Maple Avenue, a quiet area not far from downtown Austin. At approximately 8:36 p.m., a security camera near the house recorded Mo entering through the front door. Less than 10 minutes later, a black Jeep Grand Cherokee, identical to the one Caitlin Armstrong owned, pulled up nearby. It turned off its lights, stopped for a few minutes, and drove away without signaling or opening its doors. At the same time, a neighbor's doorbell camera picked up intermittent screaming, then 3 separate, cold explosions. Inside the apartment, Moriah had no chance to fight back. According to the investigation, she had been shot 3 times, twice in the chest and once in the head at close range. It all happened in a matter of seconds. There was no sign of a struggle, and her belongings were not disturbed. She collapsed on the bathroom floor, which was believed to be a blind spot for the exterior camera system. Colin, at the time, said he was home, texting with Mo as usual, unaware of what was happening. When the news broke, he said he had kept contact with Moriah from Caitlin, knowing that his girlfriend had expressed discomfort when her name was mentioned. According to Mo's roommate, she had felt like she was being followed online a few weeks earlier. Several fitness apps she used to log her cycling distances, including Strava, were set to public. This led many experts to later question whether the killer had used technology to track her every move. No one actually witnessed the incident. There were no eyewitnesses, nor were there any internal cameras. But everything, from the time, to the location, to the suspicious vehicle, started to paint a complete picture for the police, and the person they were targeting was Caitlin Armstrong. It was almost 10 p.m. when Moriah Wilson's roommate returned from a private date. The house in the quiet neighborhood was still lit as usual, but something stopped her as soon as she stepped into the yard. The front door was unlocked. Inside, everything seemed intact, with no signs of forced entry or disturbance. But no matter how many times she called, she didn't hear a response from Mo. Something she had never heard before. Feeling something was wrong, she stepped deeper into the house, down the hallway to the bathroom. And then, the sight left her frozen in place. Moriah lay motionless on the floor, blood soaking the tile, her body unresponsive. Her friend immediately backed away, trembling, pulled out her phone, and called 911 in a state of panic that was difficult to speak. On the other end of the line, the dispatcher tried to stay calm, instructing her to check her breathing, but it was too late. Police and paramedics arrived at the scene within minutes of the call. They quickly cordoned off the area and asked witnesses in the area to remain in place. Investigators entered the apartment one by one, which was no longer a temporary resting place for an athlete, but the scene of a serious crime. Moriah Wilson was confirmed dead at the scene. There were no signs of a struggle, no items were missing. Her phone was turned off, her watch was still working, and her last known location matched the address of the apartment. The silence of the scene created a chilling paradox. The crime had just happened, but everything seemed to have stopped, as if time had stopped in that fateful moment. The police checked the surroundings and obtained data from security cameras of nearby houses. An automated recording device from the doorbell next door had captured a suspicious sequence of sounds. 3 intermittent bangs, interspersed with a soft scream, no more than a few seconds long. That was all that remained. That same night, investigators began to reconstruct Moriah's final timeline. Everyone who had been in Austin, everyone she had encountered that day, was scrutinized in detail. But amid the familiar faces and initial statements, a gap began to emerge. The one person who should have been there to protect Moriah had disappeared without a trace. When the official investigation team arrived at the scene, everything seemed frozen in time. The apartment was lit, the furniture intact. There were no signs of a forcible entry, but it was this unusual neatness that made the investigators wary. Moriah's body was found lying on its side outside the bathroom, on the cold tile floor. There were no signs of a struggle in the surrounding area, no debris, no scattered objects. She was still wearing her workout clothes. The smartwatch on her left wrist recorded her last movements, ending just minutes before her death. The forensic report later determined that Mo had been shot 3 times, 2 of which hit her in the chest and 1 in the head. The distance was said to be very close, indicating that the killer had approached without the victim having a chance to fight back. The fatal wound killed her almost instantly, leaving no signs of resistance on her body. The only trace left was a faint shoe print near the door, not matching the victim's. There were no unusual fingerprints, no unusual DNA at the scene. But what caught the investigators' attention most was not what was there. It was what was gone. Moriah's race bike was still parked in the house. Her laptop, wallet, and watch were intact. Only her cell phone was turned off and placed face down on the table. A robbery? This was the work of someone who knew exactly where she would be and who had gone there with a single purpose. As the Austin night slowly faded into the morning light, investigators began to piece together the details of the case. They found no signs of a robbery, no obvious immediate motive. The victim was a young athlete, no enemies, no financial conflicts or organized crime. But investigators had a strong feeling that this was not a random attack. The next morning, the names associated with Moriah that day were identified and put on the priority list. Among them was Colin Strickland, who had been romantically involved with her. In his initial statement, Colin admitted to meeting Mo on the night of the murder, that they went swimming together and that he had dropped her off at around 8 p.m. The police were not surprised. They had camera footage to confirm this detail. However, what caught their attention was Colin's attitude when mentioning his current girlfriend, Caitlin Armstrong. Colin said that he had hidden his meeting with Mo because he knew Caitlin was unhappy with their previous relationship. He had also deleted some messages to avoid making his girlfriend jealous. This, according to investigators, did not make Colin a prime suspect, but it opened up an important line of investigation. Was someone else following Moriah out of jealousy? Caitlin Armstrong's name quickly appeared in the internal investigation files. They looked up license plate numbers from cameras near the victim's home and determined that a black Jeep Grand Cherokee was near the scene at the time of the shooting, matching the car registered to Caitlin. On May 13th, just 2 days after the incident, Caitlin was summoned to the Austin police station to clarify some information. The questioning lasted less than an hour. In her room, Caitlin appeared calm but reserved. When asked about her whereabouts on the evening of May 11th, she said she had been home all night. However, the car's camera and GPS data told a different story. Investigators had no arrest warrant at the time due to an administrative error involving duplicate case numbers. So Caitlin was released, and just hours later she disappeared without a trace. A nationwide arrest warrant was issued. Police discovered that Caitlin had sold her car, withdrawn all the money from her bank account, and used a relative's passport to leave the United States. A few weeks later, they determined that she had traveled to Costa Rica, where she began living under a false identity and even underwent plastic surgery to change her appearance. For the next 43 days, the case became the focus of the American media. A young athlete was murdered. The female suspect disappeared in the age of modern surveillance technology, shocking the public. Social media exploded. A series of conspiracy theories were spread. But the investigation force still quietly collected evidence to build a complete profile. They retraced Caitlin's route through the phone signal, discovered data using the sports application Strava, the application that Mo used to post cycling schedules. Through that, they suspected that Caitlin had secretly followed Mo before. The public posts clearly showed the location and time of training, a security hole that the victim was not aware of. In June 2022, federal agents coordinated with Interpol to discover Caitlin staying in a hostel in Santa Teresa, a coastal resort in Costa Rica. She used a fake name, worked as a yoga staff, lived anonymously, and avoided communicating with strangers. The arrest was quick, without resistance. When she was extradited to the U.S., Caitlin remained silent, did not give any explanation. But the evidence was overwhelming. The car's GPS data, surveillance video of the crime scene, the escape, and the semi-automatic gun found at Colin's house, which matched the bullets taken from Moriah's body. A notable psychological twist revealed in the investigation file. Before she fled, Caitlin had visited a plastic surgeon and asked if she could completely change her face to start a new life. Although the reason was not specified, the file helped to reinforce the idea that she was preparing for a long-term journey of hiding, something that would have been impossible if she had been innocent. By the end of 2022, the entire case file was completed. Caitlin Armstrong was formally charged with first-degree murder. Investigators called it a crime of pent-up emotion, committed with a certain amount of calculation, not an outburst, but the result of a secretly nurtured jealousy. The case was transferred to Travis County Circuit Court, Texas, where Caitlin Armstrong's name would be mentioned not just as a suspect, but as the center of a nationally watched trial. Caitlin Armstrong's trial began in early November 2023 at the Travis County Courthouse in Texas. From early morning, the courthouse was packed with people, reporters, family members, and even sports fans who knew Moriah Wilson. The atmosphere was tense and strangely quiet, as if everyone was waiting for an explanation from the woman who had been on the run for more than 40 days after the shocking incident. Caitlin appeared in the dock with a calm demeanor, but did not take her eyes off the floor. She refused to make a public plea, choosing to remain silent throughout the trial. Instead, the story was told through witness testimony, physical evidence, and the data recorded by personal devices. The prosecutor opened with a clear argument. This was not a case of murder while losing control. Everything, from tracking the victim's movements through an app to being near the scene just before the shooting, suggested a level of deliberate preparation. They showed camera footage, GPS data, and especially the gun found at the suspect's boyfriend's house, which matched the bullets taken from Moriah's body. One of the most shocking moments of the trial came when prosecutors detailed the escape route. Caitlin had withdrawn all her money, sold her car, forged documents, and even change her appearance. These actions, they argued, were not those of an innocent person, but of someone trying to cover her tracks. The defense argued that there were no direct witnesses, that the case was largely based on conjecture. They tried to sow doubt about the possibility of a third person being at the scene, but in the eyes of the jury, Caitlin's series of actions painted the answer. After days of debate, the verdict was in: first-degree murder. Caitlin Armstrong was sentenced to 90 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict was read in a heavy atmosphere. Some of Moriah's relatives burst into tears. Others were silent, clasping their hands together as if to contain their emotions. The online community and the press simultaneously reposted images of Mo, the girl with a bright smile on the track. Hashtags like #JusticeForMo spread, not only as a memorial, but also as a warning bell about the consequences of jealousy nurtured in silence. Moriah Wilson died with her future as bright as ever. In just a few days, she would have competed in a major race where she was expected to finish in the top spot. But instead of glory, her family, friends, and the entire sporting community were left speechless by a heartbreaking truth. She was taken away by a selfish, silent, and irreversible decision. No sentence can make up for that loss. 90 years in prison cannot turn back time, nor can it bring back Mo's laughter on the track, nor her unfulfilled dreams. But at least justice has been served, in the strictest, most careful and transparent way the law can provide. This case is a clear demonstration that sometimes danger comes not from strangers, but from those who are all too familiar. In the digital age, when every action leaves a trace, from location data, communication history, to application habits, an uncontrolled thought can turn into a tragedy in just a moment. This is not only a story about jealousy, but also a lesson about the limits of emotions, about the need to control behavior before it goes too far. And most of all, it is a reminder that vigilance, whether in personal life, in love, or in the use of technology, is never too much. Perhaps the hardest thing is not understanding why this happened, but how to prevent it from happening again. Because in every human being, both reason and instinct exist. The question is, who is controlling whom? What do you think about this case? What in the story makes you think the most? Share your opinion below.